Today, you will hear a simple story about work, money, and growing up. If you think life should be easy all the time, this story is for you. Stay until the end, because the last part can change how you see your future. My name is Ethan. When I was younger, I believed life was simple. My father had money, so I did not worry. I did not study much. I did not work at all. I had everything I wanted. If I saw something nice, I asked my father, and he bought it for me. My friends sometimes talked about plans and goals. They said, "Think about tomorrow." I laughed. I said, "Why should I worry when my father can pay?" Every morning I woke up late. I ate breakfast in bed. I watched videos for hours. I played games. I went out with friends when I felt bored. We ate at expensive places. We wore new clothes. We took photos in front of fancy cars. I loved the easy life. I thought it would never end. I never asked how my father earned money. I never asked about his company. I only cared about my comfort. I only lived for today. Then one evening my father called me. He said, "Ethan, come here." I walked into his room with a smile. I expected a gift, like always, but his face was serious. He pointed to a chair. He said, "Sit down." I sat, still smiling. I said, "Yes, Father." He did not smile back. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "You are not a child anymore." I laughed and said, "I know. I am tall now." He shook his head. He said, "That is not what I mean." He took a deep breath. He said, "You must learn how life works." I said, "Life works fine for me." He said, "It works fine because I work hard." I wanted to change the topic. I said, "Father, you worry too much." He said, "Tomorrow morning, you will come with me." I asked, "Where?" He said, "You will see." I felt annoyed, but I also felt a little nervous. My father was kind, but he was not weak. When he decided something, it happened. That night, I still went out with friends. I laughed and spent money. I tried to forget his words, but his serious eyes stayed in my mind. The next morning, my alarm rang early. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to sleep. Then my father knocked on my door. He said, "Up, now." I got out of bed. My hair was messy. My eyes felt heavy. I went downstairs. My father was already dressed. He held 2 small lunch bags. He gave one to me. I looked inside. It was simple food, a sandwich and an apple. I said, "Can we eat at a restaurant?" He said, "Not today." We walked to his car. He drove without music. The city looked different in the early morning. I saw people walking fast. I saw workers cleaning the street. I saw a woman opening a small shop. I saw a man pushing a cart full of boxes. I usually never looked at these things. I usually looked at my phone. My father stopped the car near a busy corner. He pointed at a man selling drinks. The man had a small stand and a big smile. My father said, "Look at him." I said, "What about him?" My father said, "He wakes up before sunrise." He said, "He stands here for many hours." He said, "He smiles even when he is tired." He said, "He works so his children can eat and study." I looked at the man. His hands were rough. His shirt was old, but his eyes were bright. My father drove again. A few minutes later, he stopped near a building site. Men and women wore helmets. They carried heavy bags. They lifted wood and metal. My father said, "Watch their hands." I watched. Their hands moved fast. Their backs bent. Sweat shined on their faces. My father said, "They build homes." He said, "They build roads." He said, "Many people live well because of them." We drove again. We stopped near a small clinic. A cleaner was washing the floor. She moved slowly, but carefully. My father said, "She keeps this place safe." He said, "She may not be famous." He said, "But her work matters." I did not speak. My throat felt dry. My father looked at me. He asked, "Do you see?" "Ethan," I said. "I see people working." He said, "Yes," he said. "Now ask yourself one question." He asked, "What have you built with your own hands?" I wanted to answer, but no words came out. I had not built anything. I had only used what others built. My father drove to his office. I had been there before, but I only went to the top floor to ask for money. That day, he did not take me to the top floor. He took me through the main hall. Phones rang. Printers made noise. People walked fast. Some looked stressed. Some carried folders. Some spoke in short, serious voices. My father said, "This is where the money comes from," he said. "Not from magic." He took me to his office and closed the door. He sat down. He said, "Tell me what I do every day." I shrugged. I said, "You sign papers." He said, "I do more than that." He said, "I wake up early." He said, "I solve problems." He said, "I make hard choices." He said, "I talk to clients when they are angry." He said, "I pay salaries so families can live." He said, "I carry pressure so you can feel free." Those words hit me. I had never thought about salaries. I had never thought about pressure. I only saw the comfortable parts of life. My father opened a drawer. He took out a simple notebook. He placed it in front of me. He said, "From tomorrow, you will work here." I laughed. I said, "Me? Work?" He said, "Yes." I said, "But I do not need to work." He said, "You do." He said, "Because one day I will not be able to do this forever." He said, "And on that day, you must stand on your own feet." I felt fear, not fear of work, fear of a future without my father. I said, "I can learn later." He said, "Later becomes never." He said, "Tomorrow at 8, you start." That night I could not sleep well. My old life felt far away. The next morning I woke up early again. My body felt slow. My mind felt full of questions. My father gave me the same kind of lunch bag. He said, "Workers bring their own lunch." He said, "Today you are a worker." At the office, he took me to a small room. There were many desks. There were old computers. A man stood near the door. He wore glasses. His face was calm but firm. My father said, "This is Mr. Carter." He said, "You will learn under him." Then my father left. I expected Mr. Carter to be friendly. But he only said, "Follow me." He walked fast. I followed. He gave me a chair and a small desk. He put a thick stack of papers in front of me. He said, "Check these numbers." He said, "Find mistakes." He said, "Mark them." He said, "Do it carefully and do it fast." I stared at the papers. There were so many lines. Numbers filled the page. At first, I thought it was easy. After 30 minutes, my eyes hurt. After 1 hour, my head felt hot. The numbers started to look the same. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to stretch. But everyone around me kept working. No one chatted. No one scrolled on a phone. This was not my old world. This was work. At lunchtime, I opened my lunch bag. The sandwich was plain. The apple was small. I missed the best restaurants. I missed long breaks. I looked around. Other workers ate quickly. Some shared simple jokes. Then they returned to work. No one complained. I felt confused. How could they live like this every day? In the afternoon, my back started to ache. My hand felt stiff from writing. I made a few mistakes. Mr. Carter came to my desk. He looked at my marks. He found errors. He said, "Do it again." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say, "This is boring." But his eyes were serious. So I nodded. I started again. When the day finally ended, I felt empty. My legs were weak. My shoulders were heavy. Outside the building, my father waited. He did not ask, "Was it fun?" He asked, "Did you finish?" I said, "I tried." He nodded. He said, "Good. Tomorrow again." That night I fell asleep fast. Work was like a heavy blanket. The next morning my body was sore. My hands felt stiff. I wanted to stay in bed. But I remembered my father's words. So I got up. At breakfast, my father looked at me and said, "You came." Only 2 words. But for me, they felt like a test. At the office, Mr. Carter said, "Yesterday you were slow." He said, "Today you must be faster." I bit my lip and started working. I tried to focus. I tried not to think about my old life. I checked the numbers again. I found more mistakes. I learned a simple trick. I read each line twice. I used a ruler to keep my place. At noon, Mr. Carter checked my work. He said, "Better." 1 word, but it felt good. It felt different from buying a new phone. It felt real. During lunch, I sat near 2 workers. One was named Rosa. The other was named Ben. They asked, "Are you the boss's son?" I felt shy. I said, "Yes." They nodded. Rosa said, "Then you will learn a lot here." Ben said, "Work is hard, but it makes you strong." They talked about their families. They talked about school fees. They talked about rent. I listened in silence. I had never thought about rent. I had never thought about fees. That afternoon, Mr. Carter gave me another stack. He said, "Finish this before 5. I looked at the thick pages. My stomach dropped. But I said, "Okay." I worked without stopping. I drank water. I fixed my posture. I moved my shoulders when they hurt. At 5, I placed the papers on his desk. He checked quickly. He said, "Not bad." 2 words. But they meant a lot to me. My father waited again outside. He asked, "Tired?" I nodded. He said, "Good." In the car, he was quiet. For the first time, I was quiet too. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. At first, every day felt heavy. Then my body adjusted. My hands stopped shaking. My eyes learned to rest and focus. I learned how to plan a small task. I learned how to check my own work. I learned how to ask clear questions. Mr. Carter still did not smile much, but he stopped saying, "Do it again," all the time. Sometimes, he said, "Good job." Those words were rare, so they felt valuable. One day, Mr. Carter said, "Come with me." He took me to a meeting room. There were 5 people inside. They were talking about a client. They were worried about a due date. Mr. Carter said, "Listen." I sat in a corner. I listened to their words. I heard the word money plan. I heard the word risk. I heard the word plan. I did not understand everything, but I understood the feeling. Work was not only numbers. Work was people. Work was duty. After the meeting, Mr. Carter said, "You saw how small mistakes can grow," he said. "A wrong number can hurt a whole project," he said. "So we must be careful." That night, I thought about the drink seller. I thought about the cleaner. I thought about Rosa and Ben. I thought about my father. I felt something I never felt before. I felt respect. I also felt shame. I remembered how I laughed at my friends. I remembered how I wasted days. I asked myself, what kind of man do I want to be? I did not like the answer of my past, so I decided to change. I started reading simple business books. I started learning basic math again. I started asking Mr. Carter for extra tasks. At first, he looked surprised. Then he nodded and gave me more work. Some tasks were boring. Some tasks were hard. But each task taught me something. I learned how to write a short email. I learned how to file documents. I learned how to talk to a partner company. I learned how to stay calm when I made a mistake. One day, I made a big mistake. I sent the wrong file to the wrong person. The client got confused. My father heard about it. He called me to his office. I expected him to shout, but he did not shout. He said, "Tell me what happened." I told him the truth. I did not blame anyone. I said, "It was my fault." He nodded. He said, "Good. Now fix it." He said, "Call the client." He said, "Say sorry." He said, "Send the right file." My hands were shaking. I called the client. I said, "I am sorry. I made a mistake. I will correct it now." The client was not happy, but he respected the honest words. I fixed the problem. When I finished, my father said, "This is work," he said. "Not being perfect," he said, "but taking duty." That day I felt older. Not older in age, older in mind. After 6 months, my father gave me a new role. He said, "You will help the team with small projects." I felt proud. I also felt scared. I asked, "What if I fail?" He said, "Then you learn." He introduced me to a small team. There were 3 workers. Rosa was there. Ben was there too. They smiled at me. Rosa said, "Now you are one of us." Ben said, "Do not forget how it feels to start from zero." I said, "I will not forget." My first project was Simple. We had to check orders and make sure numbers matched. We had to talk to a partner company. We had to deliver on time. I made a plan on paper. I wrote small steps. I shared the steps with the team. We worked together. When problems came, we talked. We did not panic. We solved one thing at a time. At the end, we finished on time. My father said, "Well done." Those 2 words felt heavier than any gift. Because I earned them. The next year was full of work. Sometimes I was tired. Sometimes I missed my old easy life. But I also felt stronger each month. I started waking up early without an alarm. I started eating simple food with no complaint. I started saving money. Before, I spent money like water. Now, I looked at each cost and asked, "Is this useful?" I also changed my friends. Some old friends laughed at me. They said, "Why do you work when you are rich?" I did not fight with them. I simply said, "I want to be ready." Some friends left. New friends came. They were workers. They respected effort. They talked about goals. They did not talk only about parties. One evening, my father invited me to dinner. Not in a fancy place. Just at home. He cooked simple food. We ate at the table like a normal family. He looked at me and said, "Do you remember the first day you worked?" I smiled. I said, "Yes." My head hurt, and my hands were stiff. He laughed softly. Then he became serious again. He said, "You have changed." "Ethan," I said, "you forced me." He said, "I guided you." He said, "You did the walking." I looked down. I felt thankful. I said, "I am sorry for the old me." He said, "Do not live in regret." He said, "Use the lesson." A few weeks later, he called me to his office again. He closed the door. He placed a small key on the desk. He pushed it toward me. He said, "This key is for you." I stared at it. I asked, "What is it?" He said, "A small office on the 3rd floor." He said, "It is not big." He said, "But it is yours." He said, "You will lead a team." My heart beat fast. I held the key. It felt heavy, not because of the metal, because of the trust. The next day, I walked into my small office. There was a desk. There was a chair. There was a window with city noise. I sat down and breathed. I remembered the boy who woke up late. I remembered the boy who laughed at the future. I almost did not recognize him. Now I had meetings. Now I had due dates. Now people asked me questions. At first, I felt pressure. Then I remembered my father. He carried pressure for many years. So I told myself, I can carry some too. I made mistakes in my new role. I missed one due date. I forgot one email. A partner company got angry. I apologized and fixed it. Each problem taught me again. Work is not easy, but work builds you. One day, I went back to that busy corner with the drink seller. It was early morning. He was there again. He smiled at customers. I bought a drink. I said, "Good morning." He said, "Good morning, sir." I said, "I see you here every day." He said, "Yes, I try my best." I said, "I respect your work." He looked surprised. Then he smiled even more. I walked away with a warm feeling. That day, I also visited the cleaner at the clinic. She was washing the floor again. I said, "Thank you for keeping this place clean." She looked up. She smiled. She said, "You are welcome." These small moments mattered. They reminded me that every job has value. After some months, my father did something new. He said, "From now on, you will not use my driver." I asked, "Why?" He said, "Because you must learn the real city." The next morning, he gave me a bus card. He said, "Go to the office by bus." I felt shocked. I had never used a bus alone. I was used to a quiet car and soft seats. But I did not argue. I walked to the bus stop. The air was cold. The street was loud. People stood close together. Some carried bags. Some looked sleepy. When the bus came, it was full. I stepped inside. I held a metal bar. The bus moved and shook. I almost lost balance. A woman near me smiled and said, "Hold tight." I said, "Thank you." At that moment, I understood a small thing. Many people start their day like this. They do it every day. They do it in rain. They do it in heat. They do it because they must. When I arrived at the office, I was already tired. Mr. Carter looked at me and asked, "Long trip?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Good. Now work." That day, I worked with a new feeling. I was not only doing numbers, I was learning the life of normal people. A week later, I received my first pay. It was not a lot, but it was money I earned. I held the small paper in my hands. I looked at the number again and again. In my old life, I spent more than this in one night. Now, this small pay felt big. I went home and gave it to my mother. She looked surprised. She said, "Ethan, you do not have to." I said, "I want to." I said, "This is my first pay." Her eyes got wet. She hugged me. She said, "I am proud of you." That hug felt better than any party. After that, I started making a simple money plan. I wrote down what I needed: food, transport, books. I also wrote down what I did not need: new shoes every week, expensive drinks, random shopping. This was new for me. Before, I never looked at prices. Now I looked at each price and asked, "Is this worth my hours?" That question changed my mind. One Friday, my old friends called me. They said, "We are going to a new club." They said, "Come with us." I wanted to go. My old habit pulled me. But I looked at my notebook. I had work to finish. I said, "Not tonight." They laughed. They said, "You are boring now." I felt a sting in my chest. But I stayed calm. I said, "I have goals." Then I turned off my phone and worked. That night was hard. It is hard to change. It is hard to leave old comfort. But the next morning, I felt proud. I won a small fight inside my own mind. A month later, Mr. Carter gave me a new task. He said, "Go to the warehouse and check stock." I asked, "A warehouse?" He said, "Yes, real goods, real boxes." So I went. The warehouse was big and noisy. Forklifts moved fast. Boxes were stacked high. Workers scanned codes. They carried heavy things. A supervisor named Lena greeted me. She said, "You are the office guy." I said, "Yes, I am learning." She laughed and said, "Then learn with your eyes open." She showed me how they counted items. She showed me how one missing box could break a whole order. She showed me how a late truck could upset many customers. She said, "People think this work is simple." She said, "But one mistake can cost a lot." I nodded. I felt respect again. I spent 2 days there. I checked lists. I walked long lines between shelves. My feet hurt, but I learned where the numbers came from. When I returned, Mr. Carter asked, "What did you see?" I said, "I saw the real world behind our papers." He nodded and said, "Good." One afternoon, the power went out in the office. Computers stopped. People stood up and talked. Some looked angry. Due dates were close. Mr. Carter gathered us. He said, "No panic." He said, "Use paper." He gave us printed forms. He said, "Work with what we have." I watched him. He stayed calm. He gave clear steps. He checked on each person. I learned another lesson. A leader is calm when others are not. A leader does not blame. A leader solves. Later that week, a client visited the office. He was angry. He spoke loudly. He said, "Your team is late." My heart beat fast. I wanted to hide, but my father looked at me and said, "Ethan, speak." I was shocked. I stood up. My voice was small at first. I said, "I understand you are upset." I said, "You are right to expect better." I said, "Here is what happened, and here is our fix." I showed the simple plan. I did not use big words. I used clear steps. The client listened. He calmed down. He said, "Okay, do it." After he's and left. My father said, "Good job." That was the first time he said it in that tone. I felt my chest warm. I also felt new confidence. Confidence does not come from gifts. It comes from facing hard moments. During that period, I also started helping a young intern. His name was Noah. He was shy and new. He made small mistakes. People around him got impatient. I remembered my first days, so I helped him. I said, "Check slowly first, then speed up." I said, "Ask questions early." I said, "Do not hide mistakes." He said, "Thank you." One day, he told me, "You are different from what people say." I asked, "What do people say?" He said, "They say you were spoiled." I smiled. I said, "They were right." I was. He looked surprised. I said, "But people can change." Teaching him also taught me. It reminded me to stay humble. It reminded me to respect every beginner. On weekends, I started doing small chores at home. I washed dishes. I cleaned my room. I fixed a broken shelf with simple tools. These were small tasks, but they made me feel capable. My mother smiled when she saw it. My father said nothing, but he noticed. One Sunday, my father and I walked in the park. He asked, "Do you still want the easy life?" I thought for a moment. I said, "I want a good life." He asked, "What is a good life?" I said, "A life where I can stand alone." I said, A life where I can help others, I said. A life where I do not fear tomorrow. He nodded slowly. He said, "Now you understand." Those words stayed with me. Years passed. My father became older. He still worked, but he worked less. He started trusting me with bigger tasks. He started letting me speak in important meetings. Sometimes I failed. Sometimes I did well. But I kept learning. I kept improving. One morning I stood in front of the mirror. I fixed my tie. I looked into my own eyes. I said, "Do not go back." I said, "Do not become lazy again." Because it is easy to fall back into comfort. Comfort feels sweet, but comfort can also make you weak. Now, let me tell you what I learned. In simple words. First, money is not just money. Money is time. Money is effort. Money is many early mornings. Money is many hard choices. Second, work is not only for poor people. Work is for anyone who wants a strong future. Work gives you skill. Work gives you confidence. Work gives you respect for others. Third, your future will not build itself. If you do nothing today, tomorrow will not be better. Small steps every day can change your whole life. Here is a simple plan you can try this week. Day 1. Choose a wake-up time and keep it. Even if you feel tired, get up and wash your face. Day 2. Write one goal on paper. Make it clear and small. For example, I will study English for 10 minutes every day. Day 3. Remove one time waster. Put your phone away for 1 hour. Use that hour for study or work. Day 4. Do one hard thing first in the morning. It can be exercise, cleaning, or reading. Do it before you do fun things. Day 5. Help someone. Help at home. Help a classmate. Help a coworker. When you help, you also grow. Day 6. Learn about money. Write what you spend in one day. Then ask, did this help my future? Day 7. Review the week. Say, what did I do well? Say, what will I improve next week? If you do these simple steps, you will feel different, not perfect, but stronger. And remember, strong people are not born strong. They become strong by practice. I learned this the hard way, but you can start now, today, with one small step. If you feel you are behind, do not hate yourself. Just start with the next right action. If you fall, stand up again. If you waste a day, do not waste the next one. Progress is built by many small days, not by one perfect day. Share this story with a friend who needs a push. And if you want more simple English stories, follow English 1314. If you want to start, do not wait for a big moment. Start with one small action. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Clean your room. Study 10 minutes. Help your family. Learn one new skill. Do it again tomorrow. And again the next day. Your life will change. Not in one day, but over time. In my story, my father used his power to push me. Maybe you do not have a father like mine, so you must become your own guide. You must talk to yourself with honesty. Ask, what am I doing with my days? Ask, what do I want in 5 years? Ask, What small work can I do today? I used to laugh at these questions. Now I know they are the keys to freedom. Because real freedom is not sleeping late. Real freedom is having skill and strength. Real freedom is not fear of the future. If you enjoyed this story, remember the lesson. Respect workers. Respect your parents. Respect your own time. And build something with your own hands. This was English 1314. See you in the next story. Thanks for watching.